Secretary Bhalla, you told us about where India currently stands in terms of the kind of investments that we're making in renewable energy, more importantly, the kind of investments we hope to attract from the private sector. But let's talk about the India-US Clean Energy Partnership and what the two sides can do together to further amplify the efforts that have already been made. I'm going to pick up from where Ambassador Keshav left off. He said that the two sides have never had it so good. In the context of energy, is it as good as it can get?
I think so. In fact, it's getting better. We have, of course, the Strategic Clean Energy Partnership, which has been there for some time. There are 5 pillars under the partnership, as you might have heard earlier, I don't know. One of the pillars is the renewable energy pillar, and that's kind of led by MNRE on one side and the US side on the other. But that's not all. We've, in fact, last year, building on what has already been achieved under this partnership and the engagement that we have, last year, we've launched the India-US Renewable Energy Technology Action Platform, the US RETAP. Again, this one is actually at the higher level. While SEP, the pillar, of course, the honorable ministers of both sides, and Secretary of Energy and Minister Petroleum chairs it. The pillar is led by the joint secretary level officers on both sides. But under the US RETAP, we elevated it to the secretary level. Now the Deputy Secretary of Energy on US side and Secretary MNRE on this side. And we wanted to identify our priority areas. And we wanted to identify technologies which India thinks is important for renewable energy development in India. And US is very happy to partner in that. Sharing that technologies or whatever expertise we have. So we have identified some of these technologies, and these are prioritized. I mean, I'm not going to ask for a solar PV technology, which is already out there, but technologies which are advanced technologies like hydrogen, green hydrogen, but developing electrolyzers, offshore wind. New technologies. So we are going to talk about storage, battery storage, but advanced battery storage. So these are the kind of technologies that we've identified. And we've had very productive association with US since last year. We had the first RETAP meeting last year. In fact, we just had the second RETAP, India-US RETAP meeting about 2 to 3 weeks ago when the US delegation had come. And we are really progressing fast on that. And again, we feel that's not the only thing. I mean, there's so many other things happening whenever we meet, at some other forum as well. We're always talking about what else can we do.
I'll talk to you about what next and what else is likely to be prioritized, but let me get to you, Ms. Kaur, and build on what we heard there from Secretary Bhalla on the points of partnership in the context of the energy transition. He just brought up the issue of technology transfer, and this has been a big issue even as far as the COP discussions were concerned. From a developing country's point of view, especially from an Indian economy standpoint, in the context of new technologies, how critical is this going to be? And, Ambassador Keshav talked about the fact that trust defines the India-US partnership. Is that going to make it easier when we talk about this challenging and much vexed issue?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that, what I want to talk about a little bit is the trust has been built through partnerships like the Strategic Clean Energy Partnership specifically. I co-chair this specific pillar with the Secretary and with his team, with MNRE, specifically to look at these key elements of renewable energy and what do we do to not only further that trust, but further the elements of progress there. And so some of the areas that we're specifically focused on is being able to nationally and regionally advance this technology. The trust is based on that, right? And some of the elements of that are first grid modernization. What does that look like? Smart grid technologies, for some of you that may be familiar. That's really about creating a more responsive and efficient power system to better integrate RE services, right? So that's one element. We're also looking at deploying advanced energy efficiency technology. That's really about improving appliances such like air conditioners, looking at building practices, looking at industrial processes, and being able to decrease energy use while being able to address emissions and providing economic benefits. broadly for the entire country. And one of the great ways in which we're doing this is through the Indian Railways. So some of you may be familiar with this, but we're partnering with Indian Railways specifically under their Energy Efficiency Action Plan, their roadmap. So what is that? It's their roadmap to net zero by 2030. So the goal really here is being able to save on 630 gigawatts, offsetting approximately 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide, which essentially equates to planting 200,000 trees. So that's huge if you look at such a symbol of the country as Indian Railways, and to be able to partner on energy efficiency with such a model, I think is really a step forward and demonstrates the trust between our two countries. And then lastly, I want to highlight the policy dialogue. We're really partnering with states across the board in India, such as Assam, Haryana, Gujarat, MP, Karnataka, Andaman, Nicobar, and we're really looking at addressing the regional energy challenges and the opportunities that exist there, helping us then tailor what our programs look like to a local level. And this really helps us support a strengthened policy environment for some of these goals. And so overall, what we really see is that partnerships like SCEP help us embody our shared vision for a sustainable energy future together.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kaur, for taking us through where the current priorities lie for the partnership, but more importantly, the roadmap that you're focused on. Deepesh, let me come to you now with the private sector participation, and we heard from both Secretary Bhalla as well as Ms. Kaur on what the governments on both sides are doing. But let's talk about the private sector's involvement. The needs are enormous, the opportunities are significant, the headroom for growth is significant as well. From a solar point of view, and you know what the Tatas are doing in this, you've had, of course, the advantage of being one of the early movers. Where do things currently lie? A lot has changed on the regulatory side. Would you like to see more? What would you like prioritized?
So in terms of what we're doing in solar, we've built this massive factory in Tamil Nadu to manufacture solar modules and cells, was funded incidentally by USDFC. This is a 5,000 megawatt plant that produces latest technology panels. What we'd like to see more is that the full supply chain integrity when it comes to solar should be made domestic. And I think that's an area where US and India can partner, especially going down the path of polysilicon. Because the Chinese have really advanced when it comes to technology, not just capacity. And I think that could be a threat, which is where India-US can partner closely. That's one. The other area where India and US can partner closely is to create a vibrant carbon market, which doesn't exist currently. The moment you create a carbon market, investments could happen in India in a much more accelerated fashion. Third, I would say other technologies, like, for example, wind turbines. We've talked about offshore wind turbines here a couple of times, but I think the next phase is to start having these projects executed on the ground. You do a few of these things, you'll see that energy transition will happen at an accelerated pace. We have an installed capacity of 5,000 megawatts in terms of operating plants. We are building another 6,000 megawatts as we speak. India, for those of you who would be interested as to how the government operates in terms of adding capacity, every week there is a 1,000 megawatt tender, practically every week, when it comes to adding new capacity. And now we're also seeing the advent of battery storage technology coming up in a very, very substantial way. That, I think, is another area for us to collaborate and partner and come up with battery chemistry where we'll have a better control on the supply chain. Otherwise, a lot of this is currently coming in from China.
I'll come to you, Deepak, in just a second, but let me get Ms. Kaur as well as Secretary Bhalla to comment on what we just heard there from Deepesh on this issue of the supply chain as well as the aspect of critical minerals that are required to make this energy transition viable as well as realistic. Secretary Bhalla, what is the plan now on that front, especially to take on the threat from China, which is a very real one? The PLI schemes are one aspect of it. The government also intends now to focus on critical minerals as well. Take us through, A, how concerned you are by this, B, what the priorities will be in order for you to be able to cope with this, as well as the partnership with the US and how you can use that to avert some of the risks.
In solar PV, for example, I'll give you an example of solar PV first, because that's wind turbine is quite advanced in India, wind turbine manufacturing. So there is something I don't think we have a problem at all. And I have colleagues from GE who would corroborate that. It's in solar PV where we started a bit later than what the world did, and of course we have a lot of module manufacturing now in India, solar PV modules. We also have a thin film technology, which of course is now is operational. But these, for the modules, of course, we've been buying cells from China, and since China is the biggest supplier, that's where the most cells come from. We have about, just to give you the numbers, we have about 60,000 megawatt worth of capacity now in solar PV module. In fact, one and a half years ago, when I think at some point I must have mentioned, that time we had about 18,000 megawatts. From 18,000, we've grown to about 60,000 in about a year. Cell manufacturing is about 6,000, about 7,000, and of course the Tata plant is coming on scale. We should have about 18,000 in the next few months, 18 gigawatt, and it could rise to about 33 to 35 gigawatts by March. But we still have to, for the difference, we'll have to import. Not only that, although we're under a PLI, we're getting integrated manufacturing in place, but polysilicon and ingot wafer plants still have to become operational. I mean, one is operational, wafer one, but it's still not totally commercialized. And so there will be a variation in the numbers between polysilicon, ingot, cell, and module. What we are trying to do is address the gap. And therefore, you must have seen that we do try some policy tweaks to encourage that to happen. Apart from the PLI, we are seeing how we can ensure, like we've done for modules. Now we've started the process for cells. So we've come out with a draft policy, looking at stakeholder comments. We will try to finalize that. And looking forward, we will come out with the visibility for ingot wafer and polysilicon as well, so that the industry is encouraged to make it happen. And why we need US, for example, for in this in this supply chain. Predominantly, the technology is in China, and it's not that it's their own technology. It was originally either American or European, Germany, some other countries. But they have taken it 7, 8, 10 years ago, and now they've moved on to 2.0 or 3.0. Now, we need to work together with the USAID and other partner countries. If there's a problem in getting that technology, then we have to look for options of partnering and developing the technology, which is still there originally in other countries, especially US. Can we take that, work together, and bring it up at par with what is there?
And that brings me to, he's preempted my question to you, Ms. Kaur.
That's exactly
this is going to be the crux of the energy partnership, is it not?
Yeah, and that's exactly what our goal is, what the Secretary highlighted, is that our partnership is about thinking about innovative solutions, being able to address workforce development in these spaces, not just of supply chain, but of critical technologies overall. And so utilizing and harnessing the strengths of both of our private sectors and the technical capacity that we have across our governments is where we come together to be able to address this for the future.
Deepak, let me come to you now, and there's been a lot of conversation about offshore as well as onshore power, and of course you have the competitive strength and the competitive advantage, especially when we talk about onshore. How does India map up today, especially when you look at the Asia-Pacific region, which you are overseeing at this point in time? What are the unique challenges, the unique opportunities, as well as the competitive benefits and advantages?
Thanks, Shereen, for setting the context. I think, India, when I look across Asia-Pacific, clearly, leaving China aside, a different animal. But India leads, right? When we look at whether it's wind or solar tariffs today, India leads there. India also had an advantage. Wind industry has been here for 40 years, heavily localized. There's very few countries globally where you have a local wind supply chain. Maybe 3, 4 countries, US, China, Germany, and India, where we have the benefit of local supply chain. At GE Vernova, our products are almost 75% local. We take pride in that. We've been installing 1 out of every 4 wind turbine in the country in this decade. And just, the government policies, when we look around Asia Pacific, I think Indian government is probably one of the most pro-consistent renewable energy policies out there. We have our challenges when it comes to execution, land, transmission, they all have to keep up with it. But in terms of government policy, it's always, aiming higher. So that's very encouraging when we are thinking about expanding our manufacturing capability, investing in new technologies. That roadmap helps us. Now, when we think about technology, we talked about innovation. How do we think more, forward-looking? Wind energy today contributes about 7 to 8% in India as well as globally. Now, if we want to meet our decarbonization goals and have renewables to be round-the-clock reliable power, wind energy has to grow up to 25%, which means 1 out of every 4 electrons globally has to come from wind. When the sun is not shining, the wind is blowing. Put together the batteries.
We hope.
Put together the batteries to fill in the gaps, right? You have the round-the-clock reliable power, fixed, dispatchable, right? Yeah. So that's where the trend is. Now, at the same time, the wind industry in India has been pretty stable in terms of manufacturing. The policies have helped us. But I think lately, just the overcapacity and just the bit of, let's say, fascination with just lowering the cost has hurt the industry. When we think about it at GE Vernova, because we play across energy transition technologies, not just wind, we know we can go through the cycles, but pure wind players from other Western world are literally exiting or pausing. So that's a concern for us as we think about how do we grow in India. We have a dual focus, innovate, make in India for India first. If that works, take it to the globe. So if we struggle on that, I think it's just going to be hard for us to take India to the world.
No, that's a fair point. The fascination with driving tariffs lower. Deepesh, you want to come in on that? Because that's something that the solar sector has been through, lived through, survived through. And you have a story to tell, don't you?
I think we've come a long way since those days. If you look at Indian tariffs today, for an investor on the equity side, Indian markets offer high-teen returns, which is what was mentioned earlier, that India is a preferred destination for capital. The way to solve this is technology. If you get higher efficiency turbines, if you improve your supply chain on that front, then I think there is enough money to be made both for the OEM and for the developer. Lastly, I'd say that capital will start becoming a constraint at some point in time, because for every 1,000 megawatts, you invest close to $1 billion. And that's where I believe that a conversation on IRA being made available for a few friendly countries like India, I think if that can be introduced in the construct, I know that you can't think of it today, but if that kind of a model can be made available in that construct, I think it will go a long way in decarbonizing India as well as the United States.
Secretary Bhalla, you've got the big RE Invest coming up in Gandhinagar. We heard from the minister. In terms of financing needs, in terms of investment, what is the government looking at this point in time in order for you to be able to achieve that 500 gigawatt target that you've set out? And what will the pitch be in Gandhinagar for RE Invest?
If you look at our estimate, we are currently at about 200 gigawatt, and we need to reach 500. Our estimate is that looking at all the aspects, I think we'll need about $400 billion plus for this transition. In the last 10 years, we estimate that we spent about $90 billion. That's the kind of an estimate that we have. So in the next 6 years, we'll need 4 times, literally more than 4 times that amount of money. And that's the kind of difference which is there. We have the opportunity. We have the players in India. We have so many investment, new opportunities coming up. But we may want to make sure that we can bridge the gap. Now, it's not, of course, it's the private sector which has to go around and look for partners, look for people who can invest. What we can do is bring them together. And the RE Invest, the fourth RE Invest, which is starting Monday, is the event where we want to bring everybody together. A lot of these investments will come from, as usual,
Yeah.
there will be 30% equity, literally 70% debt. So we are not only looking at the equity investments, of course, many investors are coming in, but you're also looking at, debt financing. We want to see how the money markets in India can be improved. We want to make our bilateral relations better. That's number one. We are already working on it. We want to use there's so many aspects where we have the common interest. And both of us agree that these are the priorities which are common between us. I think we need to make sure that we bring out the actual projects or the technology, either research or development, or bringing people together to make it happen. I think that is very important as far as this forum is concerned.